Hey team, welcome back. Another episode of Cult Stuff and Chill, episode 12 now. Do we have any updates this week?
Update on the shitty situation.
Yes, yeah, okay, I do need to know about the poop hallway.
Not as exciting, but also more disturbing than you think. We submitted a request for our building to come clean it up last week, and they still have not.
Oh,
So, it's
that's
great.
lovely. Is the smell dissipating at all?
Yeah, but it's like you can still very visibly see where, like, the shit smear
Mm.
is, and, like, it looks like somebody kind of tried to clean it up, so it's like, but
Yeah.
it really needs to be, like, fully cleaned.
Like, they need to get that. There's a YouTube channel, and I know you've watched them before because we've talked
Crime
about
scene
it.
cleaning?
Yes, yeah, the crime scene cleaners need to come and do it. You know they would get that done.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's like literal biohazard that is just
Yeah.
like all over this
It's
building.
so gross. Ugh.
But yeah, I considered it. But then it's like I'd have to pay up front and then
Yeah.
bill the landlord and
Ain't nobody got time for that.
no. Also, I think our question for the week. If you had to give your cats a report card on how good they cat,
Oh. Okay.
and we'll insert some pictures of our cats
Mhm.
here so that you know you can put a face to the name.
So, okay. First up, we've got Roomba, aka Gooba, aka Roopy Gooby, Gooba Pants, aka my goodest girl. She would have an A plus for catting because she has never had an accident outside of her box. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna change this to a B plus because lately she's been doing this thing, and I know it's because we're doing like work on our house, so her domain is a little bit messy. So she's been doing this thing where like 1, 2, 3 a.m. she'll do what we call a meow meow parade, which is she wanders the house and very loudly just like howls at the top of her lungs, like in displeasure at the fact that her kingdom is not the way that she likes. And then she'll come into the room, and usually she does it with like a little toy in her mouth. And then the parade ends when she comes to our room and drops the toy right in our doorway, and then she'll just sit there and stare at us. So everything else, she gets a B plus. Now, Nibbler, Noodle, little tiny Princess Peanut on the bed back here, she love her to death. She gets a C plus. Now, this is because every morning, if she even like gets the sense that you are even like getting ready to open your eyes, she just starts meowing, whether or not you're ready to actually get up. And it's like constant meowing, which is like a little bit annoying. And then she also, if there's like even a speck of like any sort of cat waste in the litter box, she'll just look at it and she won't use it. And then she'll be like, I'm just going to go on the plastic mat that you have put down next to the litter box. So we have to scoop our litter boxes 2 to 3 times a day because she's so goddamn picky. Um, Other than that, she's a perfect tiny princess and I love her.
So my cats, I would say that Onyx also gets a C plus. He gets a C plus, maybe even like a D plus, because for a cat, he is a terrible cat. He, again, he's like Noodle, and he will not use the litter box if it is not clean to his liking. He's very demanding about that, which I guess makes sense. He doesn't clean himself very well, so you have to like brush him and like sometimes give him baths. Like he's not like overly gross, but like his paws just look like crusty and his face looks crusty. He doesn't jump very well, and he does have like kind of like arthritis. He's always had like
Yeah.
just issues, but he's also just scared of jumping up on things. Like it scares him. He's very timid about that, but he's also like very demanding. He's like, human servant, come feed me now. So he'll wake us up, and also will push us off the bed because he demands at least half of the bed to himself right in
Oh,
the
of
center.
course.
And but as far as being an old being, an ancient being trapped in a cat's body, he does get an A plus.
I
He's
picture
very much
him
got that
as
vibe.
What's that off of Interview with a Vampire? Is it Lestat?
Yeah. Oh god,
That's
he is Lestat.
Yeah, that's who your cat is, but in cat form.
my cats are the dudes from Interview with the Vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Because Edward, my baby doll. Now, I call my cats Edward and Onyx. I might call them, like, Cat or Stinky Boy or something, but usually it's by their names. They don't really have nicknames. But Edward, my dear sweet boy, he gets an A+. He is really the perfect cat. He loves cuddles. He's very soft. He is meticulous about cleaning himself. The only place where I would drop him some points is that he is constantly damp because he has very thick, short fur. So you pick him up and you're just like, why are you damp? Like, but he's very sweet. Spit. Yeah.
He's a sweet boy.
He's a nice boy, and he gets very sad if we leave. He will meow, and he'll sit on our shoes if he sees us starting to get up and leave. He will literally use a litter box if it's totally, like, disgusting. He does not care. He's like, okay, I'll do it. It's okay. And he's maybe a little inbred, maybe a little dumb, but he is A+ cat, so. And then the cat mafia out of the barn, because we have, like, a few barn cats. They come and go, but 2 main ones, and they get an F. They're terrible. No, they get a D because they are good at mousing. But they're not very good at anything else, and they, like, as soon as I go out to the barn, they're, like, trying to get hit by the car. They just, like, swarm around my car because they're like, it's the lady that feeds us.
I will say, though, nothing taught me more about the circle of life than living on a farm and having farm cats that you grow attached to, and then they either just mysteriously disappear, get eaten by coyotes, or you see them, like, pancaked on the side of the highway. Which, guys, I understand that sounds fucking terrible, but if you're a farm kid, you'll understand, like, there's literally just hordes of cats, and there's nothing you can do to stop them from, you know, just, like, being cats and wandering around. And if you were to, like, do the thing where you trap them all and neuter and spay them, like, literally you would be a never-ending sea of just, like, back and forth from the vet because these cats just come out of fucking nowhere. They just show up. So, yeah, being a farm kid.
We have a couple we had, I guess they've all since, like, left, but we had a couple cats that, like, were very clearly someone's pet that they just, like, dropped off, and they could not function by themselves, and they just hung out at our farm for their entire lives, but, like, they had no life skills.
You would love to be able to, like, spay and neuter all of them and, like, give them the top vet care, but, like, seriously, guys, unless you've lived on a farm, I don't think you'll understand that you'll just be outside one day and you're like, where the fuck did you come from?
Yeah.
They're just cats. They just show up. So
and kittens.
Cats and kittens, and then they're just everywhere, and they're so cute, and I love them all, but nothing teaches you the values and the morals of the circle of life quite like having barn cats that just mysteriously disappear and vanish and get eaten by coyotes, so.
Or just, like, animals in general on the farm, because, like, even we've had, like, baby bunnies or, like, baby squirrels that we've had to humanely, you know, put down because they, like, had gotten attacked by something or, you know, they're kind of barely holding on to life. And
do you want to hear my most traumatizing circle of life story from living on the farm?
Absolutely.
Actually, you probably have heard this before. So for background, those of you that don't know me, my parents, they are farmers and they have cattle. So specifically beef cattle. We don't milk our cows. We kill them for burgers. Vegans, close your ears. I understand this is traumatizing. So sorry about that for you. But for me, it's just, you know, fact of life. But anyways, when I was younger, I didn't quite grasp the concept that all the cows would eventually be butchered for meat. So we had a habit of, like, naming our cows by their ear tag number. So we had this one cow, I believe it was like 563. It was super cute, and it would always, like, come up to the fence, and we would just be like, oh my gosh, 563, you're the best. Well, one time, like, a period of time goes by, and we're, like, sitting at the dinner table one night eating something beef heavy, and we go, like, Dad, what happened to 563? I haven't seen her in a while. And he kind of just goes, you're probably eating her right now. And then all of his kids were like, oh, just, like, really distraught. But that's the day that I learned about the circle of life and the harsh realities that are cattle farming. I still ate my burger that night, so obviously I didn't feel too bad about it, but again, vegans, sorry.
So my topic this week is brought to you by a TikTok I saw, which I think I sent you. It was basically a chick just saying that women enjoy true crime because it's like an echo chamber and validates them, like it validates their internalized fear and sometimes even their actual lived experiences with like the brutality of men, just in general. And I'm saying generally like women, men, and that men hate true crime because it's like a mirror and of which is reflected the fact that a lot of men are the aggressors and perpetrators of violence, specifically to women, but also sometimes other men. My story today starts on September 2nd, 1999. The Cohen family were moving out of their house in Jericho, New York, a suburb on the island of Manhattan, when the father, Ronald Cohen, noticed a large 55-gallon steel drum that hadn't been picked up by the garbage men. And the garbage men, they left a note on it that it was too heavy and said basically that Ronald needed to schedule a special delivery or bring it down to the dump himself. I should also note at this point, if you're not familiar, for our listeners, a steel drum is just like a large steel barrel, so I'll probably be using those terms interchangeably, usually used for oil or other chemicals.
It's like, isn't it, if you think of like a hobo fire under a fucking bridge, they're usually those steel trash can looking things. Yeah.
Or trash cans.
Oh,
I mean,
true.
like, I feel like a lot of carnivals and fairs use them as trash cans.
Yeah, yep.
Maybe dangerously so, I don't know.
I never really thought about it. I know my dad actually, if you go out to the farm, there's plenty of steel drum trash cans, so.
So, back to Ron. Ron was like, now that I think about it, I don't even know what's in this barrel. It was here when we moved in 9 years ago, which he said he found in a crawl space, but it was under the stairs.
Yeah.
It was under the stairs in the basement or something. So it wasn't that inaccessible. And that is just kind of weird to me. Like, you just had this barrel at your house when you moved in and you just left it there. And I also imagine that it was one of those things that was just, like, insidiously clawing away at, like, the structure of their marriage. And the wife would be like, you need to get rid of that barrel under the stairs. And he's like, oh, I'll take it out this weekend, honey. And just, like, sat there for 9 years. Because, like, that's exactly how it goes. I mean, I don't know for sure that this happened, but that's just, like, my fantasy of probably
why
that
else
situation.
Would it? I could imagine if I moved in somewhere and, like, I have a little weak noodle arm, so I would not be able to move that by myself. And if it was 9 years later, still in the crawl space or under the stairs, I would be like, listen, you either move that barrel or I'm moving my ass out of this house. So.
Like, and it's not like I don't know, it's not like anything that you can use or is worth anything. It's literally just
garbage.
Like a barrel. Ronnie Boy's curiosity gets the better of him. He's like, I don't know what's in this barrel. So he gets out his crusty, trusty crowbar, and he's like, I'm going to pop this bitch open.
You know what's even more incredible to me than the fact that the barrel was in their house for 9 years is the fact that it took him 9 years to be curious enough to open it, because I know myself, and I know that that's like the first thing I would do, like when I move in, what's in the barrel? Especially it being
You're
that
like,
heavy.
what's in the
like, you know
box?
there's something in it, and it took you 9 years for that curiosity to be piqued.
What if it's gold bars?
What if it's gold bars and it was just sitting in your fucking house? Oh my god, I would not be able. It would be the first thing I did when I moved in would be to crack that sucker open. So that is like incredible to me that they did not do that sooner.
That they have the self-restraint.
Yeah, I don't, for sure.
Unfortunately, what was in the barrel was not gold bars, but something much darker.
Oh.
So he cracks that tall boy open, and a horrendous smell immediately starts wafting out of it, and he's like, ugh. He almost vomits, but not before he notices that there's what appears to be a human hand and a lady's shoe in the barrel. So good old Ron, he's like, what the fuck? And he does what any good suburbanite would do, and he goes and he calls the police to come investigate. The police come, they literally just like pick up the barrel on a dolly and wheel it out and take it to the coroner's office. They crack it open and have a nice hiss moment, and they carefully remove and examine the contents of the barrel, which included some small round plastic pellets, like what you would melt down to put into plastic molds, a green plastic flower stem with leaves, a woman's pocketbook, the contents of which were destroyed by the barrel's liquid contents, 2 gold rings, one inscribed with the initials MHR, a gold locket with the inscription, "To Patrice, love Uncle Phil," a halogen green dye commonly used to add to plastic to make plastic flowers and trees, which the dye hadn't actually been manufactured since 1971, along with some brownish reddish liquid, which was just likely corpse juice.
Oh, corpse
and of
juice.
course,
Ugh.
and of course, what appeared to be the mummified remains of a young woman.
Ugh.
So the coroner, obviously, they've got this young woman there. They start doing the autopsy, and during the autopsy, they discover that the woman was between 20 and 30 years old, was white and Hispanic, stood about 5 feet tall. They discovered also that she had some unusual dental work that wasn't performed or wasn't commonly performed in the United States, which led the detectives to think that she was from a South American country. She appeared to have succumbed to blunt force trauma to the head. She had 10 separate lacerations on her head and multiple skull fractures that it showed she had been so brutally beaten. Some of the fractures were in tiny, tiny pieces. So it wasn't just like, oh, she got cracked in the head or, it might have been an accident. It was a very forceful beating that this woman had. There was blood staining to the areas all around her head injuries, and indicating she had been alive and actively bleeding while she had received this brutal attack rather than having been pummeled post-mortem or, having something happen post-mortem. And probably the saddest of all, she was approximately 8 to 9 months pregnant with a son.
Aww.
Now, the barrel itself had several unique coded numbers on it that led detectives directly to a chemical company in Linden, New Jersey. This company had extensive records on all of these barrels, and they figured out that this specific one was manufactured in 1963 with the purpose of transporting dye, like the green dye that was found inside of it. This, along with the knowledge of when they stopped manufacturing the green dye, which was 1971, placed a timeline of the murder strictly around 1963 to 1971, or slightly after. Markings on the outside of the barrel indicated that it had been sent to Melrose Plastics, a Manhattan-based synthetic flower company. Around the same time, the contents of the pocketbook, including an address book, had been sent to a forensic document examiner in an attempt to save it, since the barrel was full of mummy juice and green dye. The papers are basically just like pulp, like when you get papers wet, and they were coated in a yellowish-brown slime, described as a jelly-like substance that just coated your hands when you touched it. Luckily, this lady, the forensic document examiner, she really is like the MVP of this whole story, because she went hard. So she slaps that bitch in a document drying cabinet for a few days, and she manages to save the documents. And then she inspected it under a video spectral comparator, or VSC, and that basically uses science, infrared light sources, and likely magic to make faded, altered, or destroyed documents legible again. So you couldn't actually, with your naked eye, see any of the ink on the paper, but because she could go through and keep like switching through the infrared lights, it would make it like appear, I guess, and then they could like kind of cross-reference those against each other to make the full text that had originally been written.
I'm gonna have to get to YouTube and see if I can find a video of that, because that's actually really interesting.
So at first, when they had tried to read the documents under the VSC, like I said, they didn't actually see anything. They thought they had hit a dead end, but this lady's like, no, I'm going to keep at this. So she just kept doing it over and over and over again. And just like, I think the machine also collects the data and then like runs it against itself. So it, like if it picks up something in this run through, then it'll add it to the next run through, and then it'll like slowly basically build the text on the document. So she eventually gets enough information from the document to identify a resident alien number, which belonged to a 28-year-old immigrant, Reina Angelica Marroquin. Reina was an immigrant from El Salvador, and she also managed to identify some addresses and phone numbers of Reina's contacts. However, as it had been 30 years, investigators were disappointed to find that most of the contact information in the pocketbook was grossly outdated. So they thought they had reached a dead end here, and they decided to pivot their investigation to the family that lived in the house from 1963 to 1971, which again is our timeline based off of the evidence from the steel drum. They find out that the owner of the house in the 60s and 70s and it's this dude, Howard B. Elkins, who was a local businessman who lived there until 1972, when he retired to Boca Raton, Florida with his wife. Now, this guy seemed pretty unassuming until detectives were questioning the other long-term residents of the neighborhood, and they were like, "Oh, Howie, oh yeah, we remember him. He ran a plastic plant company in Manhattan." And the detectives were like, "What?" So this was a huge red flag to the detectives, because remember, the barrel Raina was found in was originally sent to Melrose Plastics Company, which is located in Manhattan. She was found with plastic pellets and a plastic leaf, indicating that the barrel likely had been taken by someone who worked for the company rather than it having been like dumped and then somebody picked it up from the dump. This story, obviously, it's very sensational. It goes straight to the papers, and people don't really expect this from Jericho. It's a pretty like mundane suburban neighborhood. It's like, you know, it's just one of those places. And from this media fervor, the Nassau County Police Department, which is the county in which Jericho is, they actually receive an anonymous phone call from a random dude. Now, this dude actually ties it all together for detectives, because at this point they still hadn't like put the pieces together. They're just like, what are these pellets? What is this dye? We don't know. Like, this guy is the other MVP of this story. He was like, okay, so the dye and the pellets they're used in manufacturing fake plants, like the Melrose Plastics. And he also just casually slides it in there that Howard Elkins, the former owner of Melrose Plastics, was having an affair with a young Hispanic woman in the 1960s. And, like, he just kind of drops that bombshell and just hangs up. He's like, bye.
Dang, I want to know. I want to shake this man's hand. Okay, it's probably... Dang, I have a feeling that this guy at one point, like, was maybe buddies or coworkers with this other dude. And he's like, I really fucking hate Carl, which is the guy's name that I'm going to assign for right now. And then he's just, like, finally realizes his moment to fuck this guy over. And he just really took it. And I love to see it.
It's, like, the level of petty that you hope.
Yeah, that you can always aspire to be. Like, I can think of a few people that I would love to see that maybe they were, you know, involved in a murder and just call up the cops and be like, yeah, bitch, let me give you all the info.
Well, my fantasy for this is that, like, Howard's wife was actually the one that called. Ooh, because she did find out about it. And she was just, like, had one of those, because they had the boxes even then that you could be like, oh, my name is, or she even just, like, had a smoker's voice or something. I don't know. But, like, I just really wanted to be her, and she's like, I cannot deal with this fucking man anymore. Like, I hate him. I want him to go down. So, I don't know. I have a lot of fantasies in this story.
So, like, that man, they never know who called that tip in? If you're listening out there, you're probably not listening out there. But if you are, just know that I love you. And that was a true baddie move. We love it.
We love a petty king.
We love a petty king.
So, now that detectives have a lot to talk with Howard about, they decide to pay good old Howie a visit. So, they hop on a plane, they fly down to Boca Raton, and they start interrogating the Hauser. And he immediately just starts, he's lying, he's combative, he is not cooperating with the investigation. Like, they were asking him first if they recognized the steel drum, the pellets, or the chemicals, and he just denied knowing that he had ever seen anything of that sort in his life. Like, oh, I've never seen pellets, I've never seen this dye.
What? Okay. I don't know why this just clicked for me, but if you knew that you had a barrel in your home with a dead body from a murder you committed, why would you fucking leave it there?
Especially after moving out. Like, you could pay somebody to move that out for you.
Like, he's just like, oh, the new homeowners, they'll take care of it. It'll be fine. And he just leaves a fucking dead body in the house. Oh my God, what a fucking idiot.
This is why, like, murderers, they really just, they have dumb bitch hours, and that's how they get caught. It's like, this whole story is a dumb bitch hour for Howie.
It's not just dumb bitch hour, it's a dumb bitch lifetime for Howie. God.
Well, and it's like, he was lying about stupid stuff. Like, oh, I've never seen pellets. I've never seen this dye. It's like, you used to own a flower and plant manufacturing company. You have seen these. You do know what this is. Like, at least be like, oh, yeah, I recognize these, but, you know, I don't know why that was in my house or whatever. So, strangely, the one thing that he does admit to is that he had an affair. He's like, yeah, I had an affair and before I left New York.
Oh my god.
But he denies. He's like, I don't remember what she looks like. I don't know her name or her age or appearance or, ethnicity, anything. I don't remember. It was over 30 years ago. It's like, I'm pretty sure you remember who you slept with.
Well, like, okay. No, I don't know what this plastic is, even though I worked as a plane for 20 years. But yeah, I had an affair. Oh my god.
It's just, like, weird. The detectives also asked Howie to take a DNA swab test, which they wanted the DNA. They told him they wanted the DNA so that they could test against the baby and the woman in the barrel. And he was like, nope, no, we're not going to do that. So, anyways, we are going to take a quick detour from Howie's interrogation. Back to that hardworking forensic document analyst. Again, real MVP of the story. And she had continued to scour the address book for information, just constantly running that thing day and night. She eventually came across the still accurate contact info for one Kathy Andrade, one of Raina's friends and her former English teacher. And so they reach out to this Kathy, and she is just heartbroken upon hearing the news about Raina. She's like, Raina was one of the most kind and loving people that she had ever known, like if maybe a little young and naive. She said that Raina had come to the U.S. in 1966 to study at the High School of Fashion Industries, but had taken a job working at Melrose Plastics to make ends meet. Shortly before her disappearance, Raina had admitted to Kathy that she had been having an affair with her douche canoe boss, whose identity she did not actually disclose to Kathy. And Raina had also admitted that she was pregnant by said douche canoe and that she had called his wife to tell her about the affair, basically trying to get the wife to file for divorce so that Raina could marry this absolute war on the ass of humanity. So, I mean, she's got side chick vibes, but also she was like fairly young, and you can't really fault her for that. Like, she didn't deserve to die for this. So that incident, that went about as well as expected. And afterwards, Raina, she had called Kathy and she was like, I am really scared. That did not go well. I'm spooked. I'm terrified. And then one day, Kathy just stopped hearing from Raina. And she said that she went to her apartment to look for her and she just wasn't there. And it didn't look like there was a struggle or anything. It was just an empty apartment. So Kathy went down to the police department and was like, hey, my friend is missing and this is why I'm concerned. And the police were just like, she probably is just out shopping.
Okay.
They refused to fill out a missing persons report, and because Kathy couldn't actually identify the name of Raina's lover, obviously there's no leads, and she couldn't even investigate it herself, which it seems like she was full ready to go and try to find this dude, but I think by that point he had even retired or something. I don't know. Back to Howie's interrogation in Boca Raton. This is the exact moment when these dumbass detectives, and I'm sorry, the police in this story, they are not. The forensics examiners, yes. The police in the story, no.
Ain't it, Chief?
Just idiots. They royally fucked this investigation up right here. So the detective, attempting to intimidate Howie, I don't know, into giving him his DNA, I don't know what he was trying to accomplish. He basically tells Howard, there's not a doubt in my mind that you did this. The evidence is just lining up too well. I'm going to go and get a warrant for your blood, and then I'm going to test that blood against the baby and the woman in the barrel, and so help me God, when I have that proof, I'm going to send you to the electric chair. Well, he didn't say the part about the electric chair, but
he was thinking it.
He did say, he's like, I'm going to put you away for the rest of your life. He spooked Howard. They can't arrest him at this point, so he shoos the police out of the house. He gets flighty. He decides to go shopping to calm his nerves. He takes a trip over to Wally World, and instead of getting some taquitos or mini brands we might to cool down, he buys a 12-gauge Mossberg 500 pump-action shotgun and some shells. So, Howie, he takes this shotgun to his neighbor's garage. He climbs into the back of his car. He gets all cozy, and he shoots himself in the head with said shotgun.
God damn it.
Where he was later found by his son, accompanied by police. Howard did not leave a note as to why he unalived himself, but I think we can all guess why.
Because he was guilty as fuck.
But also for me, it's obviously we know that this guy was guilty. There's no doubt about it. But, like, what if he hadn't been guilty and this detective comes around, just swinging his dick around, trying to intimidate Howard, and, like, Howard had killed himself because he thought he was going to get framed for it anyways, even if he was innocent. So, like, I don't know. Obviously, he was guilty, but what if he hadn't been? They basically caused this guy to kill himself because, like, it was just shitty police work. Anyways, the Boca Raton coroner takes a sample of Howie's blood, and after some intense forensic work, not so much for Howie, but, like, on the part of the baby, because the DNA had deteriorated after 30 years in a barrel, they determined that, yes, come on down, Howie, you are the father. At this point, investigators are like, we know that Howard killed Raina. But because everyone involved was dead, they kind of had to piece together the sequence of events. And they figured out after Raina had called Howie's wife, trying to get her to break up with Hauser, he came up with this plot to silence her. And that he either went to her apartment or lured her to the factory, where he just, like, violently bludgeoned her to death. Probably not her apartment, because it didn't really look like there was a struggle or anything. But definitely, he either went to the apartment and took her to the factory, or just took her straight to the factory. And this is, like, where you can tell how much he hated her or was, like, mad at her, because just by how ferociously he had bludgeoned her to death. It wasn't, like, one or two hits. It was, like, he was taking out his fury on that poor girl's head. So from there, he took her body back to his house, and he put her in the barrel. And likely his plan was to dump the barrel in the ocean, because he had a boat, you know, because he's a rich white man. And so he was filling it up with these plastic pellets so that it would weigh it down. So it was like a full Dexter moment. And he's like, she's going to sink to the bottom of the bay. But he underestimated how much these pellets actually weighed. So when he filled it up, the whole barrel weighed about 350 pounds, and he couldn't actually lift it. So in typical man fashion, he's like, I'm just going to put this under the stairs and not take care of it.
Ugh, good grief.
Which then it was left there by multiple men in multiple marriages until Ronald Cohen opened it 30 years later.
It wasn't just one family that ignored a bear.
No, it was multiple families.
What the fuck? Okay, and nobody thought to open. How?
It was two dudes. It was Ronald Cohen and another family before. And the guy before was like, oh, I didn't want to open it because there's, like, chemical labels on the side. But it's like, okay, so you're going to let these chemicals sit in your house?
Right. I don't, okay.
And really, it was
my dumb ass would have opened it anyway. For sure. Like, I probably would have died from whatever fumes it was, but I'm not just going to let it fucking sit in my house.
You don't know. You just don't know. It could have been full of gold coins or Rolexes or... Anywho, unfortunately, the Raina and the young baby's lives weren't the only body count in this story. When Raina was positively identified, a reporter basically reached out to her family in El Salvador to tell them that what had happened. And I don't know if he kind of facilitated having her remain shipped back down there or what, but he definitely was, like, I think the first person to tell her mom. And so he goes down there and he talks to Raina's mother, who at this point was 95. Aww. And she was just, like, incredibly traumatized and heartbroken. And she basically told this reporter that dating back to the date when she originally lost contact with Raina, that she couldn't stop dreaming about Raina being, like, murdered, and had even actually dreamed about her being trapped inside a barrel a few times. And due to, like, this heartbreak, she died, like, a month after Raina's funeral. And so she was actually buried next to Raina.
That's so sad.
That's, like, very sad. It's like, you couldn't have just waited. She's 95. How much longer she got anyways?
I mean, I guess, though, you could think of it this way, too. Maybe she was, like, ready to go, but she just really needed closure. And maybe that closure is what, like, allowed her to finally, like, peacefully... Like, I know she was obviously heartbroken, but, like, having closure about what happened to her daughter probably was, like, a really big relief in her last moments, I would imagine.
Like, having that closure, that her daughter didn't just, like, abandon the family, or... Because also, like, a point of this is that Raina was, like, very close with her family, and she wrote them and called them as much as she could, so, like, for her to just disappear, like, it's probably traumatizing. Like, that was... Obviously, her mom knew that something had happened to her. It wasn't just, like, she... Decided to have fun in New York City and live the Sex and the City lifestyle. Like, it was literally just, like, something bad had happened to her. So it's sad. But anyways, that's my story of why men ain't shit, and that's why old women covens are really the way to go.
Exactly. Okay, so now that Ashlee has emotionally wrecked us for the day, I'm going to hopefully not bring any negative energy into your lives. But ironically, my topic was spurred on also by TikTok. Okay, again, I said this earlier, but I'm on a very weird side of TikTok right now where it's like doomsday preppers and also people talking about mysterious things in the woods of Appalachia, specifically Wendigos and skinwalkers. So today we're going to be talking about skinwalkers and a little bit about Skinwalker Ranch. Now, keep in mind, this is not taking place in Appalachia. I think that the version of a skinwalker that is in, that part of the United States is actually technically the Wendigo. But it really sounds like a very similar thing. So we're just going to do the skinwalker portion of that today. And then also, you guys go on TikTok and just immerse yourself in Appalachia folklore because let me tell you, those people, they must live a terrifying life because they're all like, yeah, if you hear something in the woods, if you don't hear it, just pretend like you don't hear it, and it's because the Wendigo's gonna come get you.
Okay, so parts of my family were like travelers in Appalachia.
Mm-hmm.
Appalachia. Anyways, and like there are things like and now it's like, okay, it's just like coyotes hunting. Like coyotes, if you've never heard, obviously Devin, you've probably heard it, but if any of our listeners haven't heard coyotes hunting, it's like just a cacophony of like yelping and like sometimes it sounds like screaming and sometimes it sounds like animals. Also like bobcats sound like screaming.
Yeah.
But like my grandma would be like, no, you gotta just turn around and walk the other way. She's like, just ignore it. She's like, even if you think it's a baby, just walk away. Because, like, a lot of times a bobcat or something will sound like something screaming.
They literally sound like a woman screaming for help.
Yeah.
Literally. It's a little unsettling. But apparently that's not actually a bobcat. It is a Wendigo or a skinwalker. So, getting into it, before I get, too far into this, I just want to acknowledge that, like, the legend of skinwalkers is Navajo legend. And so I kind of want to approach this as respectfully as I can because I know upon doing research, apparently the Navajo are actually very reluctant to share and like speak about some of their beliefs because obviously historically white people have been awful. And so like by not speaking about these beliefs, they are like protecting and preserving them for their own culture to make sure that like they don't get persecuted, yada yada for it. And B, with some of these beliefs, aka like the skinwalkers we're talking about today, it said that like even by just talking about them, you're basically summoning one. So if I die tonight, if I mysteriously like vanish into the wilderness one day, it's my own damn fault, is what I'm saying here. And also, I like truly mean no disrespect to anyone's culture by talking about this. I just like genuinely love a good spooky story and legend, and they've been all over my For You page, and I've been on a fucking rabbit hole about this. So that being said, let's hope I don't die. And also, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to do this respectfully. So.
But it's also, like, we need to approach it from a very scientific thing. So it's like, it's not just Native American culture that we approach scientifically. It's all culture. It's like anybody's religion, beliefs, we try to find a scientific explanation first.
Unless it's like we're talking about a cult where your beliefs are fucking abusive and awful.
Trash.
In which case, we were going to shit on you heavily and not feel bad about it. But that's not the case this week. So let's get into it. I'm assuming you're familiar with skinwalkers because you just told me that story about the Appalachian side of your family. But they're like fucking spooky. And so the name of the skinwalker actually comes from a Navajo term, Naldusi. Again, sorry for my pronunciation. I say this every week because for some reason I always pick the stories with impossible pronunciations. I'm trying to sound it out phonetically. But Yi Naldusi, which means with it he goes on all fours. And so they're actually just one of many different types of Navajo witches, but they're considered the most dangerous and ill-intentioned of these witches. So the Navajo are super in tune with like the spirit world, and actually their relationship with the spirit world is pretty much central not only to their governing beliefs but also to their religious practices. And they also believe that it's their duty as earthly beings to maintain the peace between themselves and the earth. And within the Navajo, one of the most sacred and prestigious positions that you can have is to be a medicine man or woman, because they stand equality. And basically, this medicine person's job is to heal and guide their tribe both physically and spiritually. Most of this healing was done through like the super complex knowledge of different medicinal herbs. They would also be really well versed in spiritual rituals that were passed down from, you know, the Navajo medicine people of the past, from like the beginning of their practice. So they would like have this like really all-encompassing knowledge on, you know, both physical and spiritual healing, and they would just be like the leaders of their communities, aside from the chief. But moral of the story, they'd be important to the society of Navajo tribe. But obviously these people, they're super powerful within their communities, but they were actually considered to be witches, but like not in the white person sense, where they're gonna like start a fucking witch hunt and throw them like off a cliff with bags of rocks tied to their ankles. So they actually think that witch isn't like a bad thing. In fact, they're just seen as a very natural part of life, and they're not really even seen as supernatural beings at all within this tribal culture. It's more of like a, yeah, the medicine man, he's a fucking witch. We love it. So good for them for not being fucking terrible, basically, is what I'm getting at here. All of that being said, even the most well-intentioned of witches can break bad when like faced with all of the power, which is where we enter the skinwalkers of our story. So it's said that skinwalkers are actually medicine men who have been corrupted by the power that's been bestowed upon them by their fellow tribesmen, and they've essentially lost any interest in healing or protecting their tribe with that power. They are simply at this point acting in self-interest. These corrupt medicine men, they would actually begin to practice darker magic that would use items like human corpses and bones, and then they would perform rituals and magic that were intended to like hurt and kill victims, basically. However, that in and of itself does not make them a skinwalker. In order to make the transition from healer to like dark magic medicine man gone bad, there's a very specific ritual that needs to take place. So this initiation into the skinwalkers like secret bad guy club is for them to commit a murder, and not just any sort of murder. They have to commit a murder of a relative, preferably a sibling, because familicide is like an even more brutal crime than murdering a rando in their culture, and arguably in any fucking culture. To murder your family member is not good. Once they're initiated into the Bad Girls Club, the mission of the Skinwalker is basically just to create like absolute chaos. So they'll kill for like any number of reasons. Usually it's like greed, envy, spite, or revenge. So it's like the big murdery four. But it's also said that they'll like rob graves to build their personal wealth and just, like steal ingredients for their magic spells, which is fucking gross and terrifying. But you know, so is the legend of a skinwalker is fucking terrifying. So that, you know, right on brand. And it's also said that these witches, they kill as a means to keep themselves alive. So it's like the Sanderson sisters. They're just like killing people to stay youthful and powerful, which we stand. I wonder if the Sanderson sisters could shapeshift.
Well, I mean, they got old and got younger, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why they had to like suck the life force out of young Thackeray Binks. And wait, no. Thackeray Binks was the cat.
The cat.
Whoever, God, I watched this movie 8 billion times and I can't even think of the name of that guy that they were sucking his life out of. But, you know, who cares, right? Not even the point of the story, remotely. So, that being said, how do they do that exactly? Like, you know, take the life force of people? Like, they've got a lot of superpowers. So these guys, they're fucking, I don't understand, like, if they are real, how they really haven't just, like, taken over the world at this point. Because their powers include transcending the laws of physics and defying all laws of our reality. Which, really, to me, says they can do whatever the fuck they want, whenever the fuck they want. They also have the power of flight and invisibility. They can also possess the living basically just by looking into their eyes and then using that body as a living puppet. They can also run fast, like faster than a car, and they can jump super, super high. And when joined together as a coven, skinwalkers can cause chaos not only like within their local tribes, but across great distances. So it sounds to me like they could take over the world if they wanted to. So maybe that's why we need our doomsday kits, is because the skinwalkers are going to come and take over the world.
Well, it's also like they became skinwalkers because they were selfish, so maybe it's like they're just doing hot girl shit, so they're not really concerned about organizing or like becoming a collective so that they can become stronger. They're just like, they can't stop the infighting enough to get organized. Kind of like any vampire story ever.
Yeah, they just want to stay young, hot, and beautiful. And don't we all? But, like, maybe just get Botox. Don't, like, become a skinwalker and murder people, please. So, how do we know if there's a skinwalker nearby? Like, what are your red flags? Like, how do you know when it's time to get the fuck on up out of there? Here are the red flags that we know of. Again, it sounds like they can pretty much do whatever they want, whenever the fuck they want. So, I don't feel like any of these red flags are going to help you, because if a skinwalker wants to come get you, they can probably fucking come get you. But, you know, here's some red flags for you. They'll make sounds that sound like banging and scraping on the doors and windows. And occasionally they'll pull like a peeping Tom moment and spy on you through the window. Allegedly, they have bright red eyes. So, you know what? I wonder if Mothman is a skinwalker. Because he also had bright red eyes. He also could fly. He also could run and jump incredibly high.
I mean, that's the best theory we've had. That's one of the better theories we've had.
I'm going to have to revisit Mothman. Because, okay, allegedly, the Mothman was a curse by a native tribe. So what if he is like a skinwalker / Wendigo sent out by Chief Cornstalk? My mind just blew out itself, basically. Okay, I'm going to have to revisit the Mothman story at a later date with this fucking new info that we just came up with. But there are also other warning signs aside from like them peeping in your windows. So basically, if you come across an animal with strangely human eyes or a human with strangely animal eyes, baby, it's time to run. That there is a skinwalker. Then when they're in their people form, they'll wear the hides of the animal that they most prefer to change into, which is typically a predatory animal. It said for this reason the Navajo wouldn't wear the pelt of predatory animals. So typically they would just wear like buckskin or hide from animals that they'd raised to graze for food. So if you see a person in the skin of like a wolf or a mountain lion or something, chances are, again, we got a skinwalker on our hands. Baby, don't look it in the eyes. So they'll also leave footprints and tracks much larger than any animal you'd see in the forest. God damn, is Bigfoot a skinwalker too?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think Bigfoot, Jesus, are all cryptid skinwalkers. There's a lot to unpack here.
That's a valid argument and a valid point.
There's a lot to unpack here. And you know what? When I was doing my notes on this yesterday, it didn't occur to me, but as I'm reading it, I was like, wait, this sounds awfully like these other cryptids that we know of. I don't know that Nessie's a skinwalker. I don't think skinwalkers are really, you know, aquatic animals. Yeah.
But maybe there's like a mermaid version.
Damn. Okay.
Also, Nessie could be just like UFOs.
True. Very true. So now that my mind is like scrambled because I'm having all these fucking brilliant revelations about the nature of skinwalkers, we'll keep on our list here. And if you see one, so if you've noticed those red flags before, if you see one, they're not going to look entirely human, but they don't look animal either. So like they're a strange cross between a human and animal. TBH, like all of the photos that I've seen that were like quote unquote taken of skinwalkers, they really just look like a bear or a wolf with mange. But allegedly, the skinwalkers don't look either human or completely animal.
But then I think about like that picture of that dog that has human eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of
or
dogs
Kristen
with people
Bell.
eyes. Oh, yeah. She got dog eyes.
Right?
Yeah. Like
right.
real golden
It's
retriever energy.
I mean, I love her. I think she's a sweet, cute person, but like she's got animal eyes.
She does, yeah.
Is Kristen Bell a skinwalker?
Kristen Bell, Bigfoot, Mothman, all skinwalkers. Some more nefarious than others, but definitely all skinwalkers. Oh, jeez Louise. Okay.
Some people are just out here voicing, what did she voice? Anna from Frozen?
Oh, yeah. Damn, can we get Frozen 3 where Anna turns out to be a skinwalker?
Love it. We love
that reindeer seemed awful human. If you ask me, he was pretty sentient.
Are all Disney animals skinwalkers?
Pascal, fucking
Remy?
Sven the reindeer. Oh, Remy was definitely a skinwalker. Are you kidding me? He was a fucking chef. He was the most human of all the animals, I would argue. All the cats from Aristocats.
And the dogs.
And the dogs. Basically, every Disney movie is just a movie about skinwalkers trying to blend in. At this point. Anyways, so.
Now we've totally derailed.
Oh, God. Okay, so per our point we were talking about earlier, often you'll hear screaming or crying coming from the woods. Sometimes a voice calling out to you. And, okay, let me be fucking clear. If you hear screaming coming from a dark forest, do not go investigate. It's either a bobcat, a skinwalker, or something you need to call the fucking police to go check out. You have no business being in the dark woods. Like, you are not a forest savior. Just fucking turn around, go fuck home. If it sounds like a person, call the cops. They'll go out, they'll figure it out, or they'll get eaten and it won't be your responsibility. So anyways, obviously, all this being said, we do not stand a skinwalker, and neither do the Navajo. And historically, they would blame like disease, drought, murder, loss of cattle, basically anything that happened to the tribe that was bad. They would blame skinwalkers. So like obviously, they spent a lot of time preoccupied with like how the fuck to get rid of them. And as it turns out, this oftentimes required the skill of an even more powerful medicine man that would perform rituals to get the skinwalker to use its powers basically against itself. Unfortunately, arrows and bullets wouldn't cut it most of the time. It's not going to slice your cheese. It's not going to cut the mustard. It's just going to piss off the skinwalker. However, if you are brave enough to go into that dark forest and attempt skinwalker murder, you've got some rules to follow. And you're still probably fucked. But anyway, first, your arrows and or bullets, they need to be coated in white ash. And next, baby, you gotta shoot for the neck and go for the kill, because anywhere else you're just gonna like slightly injure it, and then you'll be truly fucked because the skinwalker will be out for blood. So again, turn around, call the medicine man, call the police, don't handle it yourself. You're not gonna have good luck unless you're a marksman and you happen to have white ash on your hands. Then, you know, enter at your own risk, right?
Wait, like white ash from the tree white ash, or just like ash that happens to be white?
Unclear. My research is inconclusive and poorly done, so I don't know. So, okay.
Fair enough, dude. Fair enough.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm not a professional researcher, but I do try sometimes. So, now that we know exactly what kind of baddie that we're dealing with, I do have to mention that there are stories from mostly the southwestern portion of the United States that still to this day point to or blame the existence of skinwalkers for different misfortunes. So it's time for some scary and allegedly true, but probably like creepypasta skinwalker stories. Our first story is a little quickie one. So it takes place in the 1980s. There's a family, they're in their car, they're driving through a Navajo reservation, and as they slow to make a sharp turn, a mysterious creature jumps out of the ditch and into the car's path, aka exactly what the fucking Mothman would do.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. And the creature was described as black, hairy, and ironically, he was in his casual Fridays and he was wearing a t-shirt. Then the family, they arrive back home in Flagstaff, and they are woken up in the middle of the night by sounds of drums and chanting. Upon looking outside of their home, they saw dark figures of men standing along the fence at the perimeter of their property, and they were unable to cross the fence line and disappeared. So I wonder if it's like vampire rules where you have to be invited in, so they weren't able to cross the property line. I'm unclear, because there's a lot of stories also where they'll like come right up onto the porch and be like knocking on your doors and windows. So I don't know why they didn't just come onto the property, unless they were really just punking this family and just like doing a practical joke. Who knows? So that story is pretty much fucking child's play when it comes to this story of skinwalkers. So we're going to move on to the meat and the potatoes here. we're going to talk about Skinwalker Ranch. So this ranch, it's about a 512-acre property. It's in southeastern Utah that borders the Ute Native Reservation. And its name is actually called Sherman Ranch, or was, however, due to the insane amount of paranormal activity, it's been given like the unofficial nickname of Skinwalker Ranch. And as you can probably tell from my previous stories on this podcast, I love a little history lesson. So let's just like do a brief little history lesson on this land. So prior to the Ute being moved to the reservation that borders this ranch, they were like a fierce, war-minded people. They lived primarily in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. Basically, they were like gods of war. They were just like powerful, badass, gonna get you kind of people. So at one time, the Ute and the Navajo battled together against common enemies. However, when the Ute began acquiring goods and horses from the Spanish settlers, they actually began to abduct the Navajo people and sell them in the New Mexico slave market. So later, during the Civil War, some of the Ute actually joined up with white settlers in a campaign against the Navajo, which was a big fucking mistake, buddies. So this campaign, it ended up with the Navajo being forced from their land and made to march to a reservation in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. And so this walk was called the Long Walk of the Navajo. And even though the tribe eventually was allowed to return to their land on the Four Corners, conditionally, of course, because again, white people, historically not great, the Ute began to believe that the Navajo people had put a curse on them for all their prior shitty behavior against them. And so from that point on, the Ute tribe were plagued by what they attributed to Skinwalker-induced bad luck. Now that we know the background here, what happens to lie on the border of this cursed Ute land but Skinwalker Ranch? So, another fun and somewhat unrelated fact, the ranch is actually located in a part of Utah that's nicknamed UFO Alley, just based on the sheer amount of UFO sightings. So this place really feels like it would just be a paranormal fucking party, basically, because not only do we have a Navajo skinwalker curse, but we have aliens out the fucking asshole. So the spooky tales of this ranch, they actually begin to be documented in 1994 when the property is purchased by a couple named Terry and Gwen Sherman. So this couple, they move in with their 2 kids and a bunch of livestock because it's a ranch. Duh. So when they got there, they were kind of surprised to find that the previous owners, they had placed deadbolt locks on literally all of the doors and the windows, including on the inside of the house. So the windows were locked from the outside and the inside. And some of these had deadbolts on like the kitchen cabinets as well. So doors, windows, kitchen cabinets, everything is bolted the fuck shut. And at both ends of the house, there's iron stakes and heavy chains that had been installed. So the Shermans, they just kind of guessed that maybe this was used by the previous occupants for large dogs. My running theory is that they had skinwalkers tied to those fucking iron stakes. This is a theory that I am just coming up with on the fly. But they were using those stakes to capture the skinwalkers and enslave them as guard dogs, essentially.
Okay, but I'm also picturing that they like dressed them up in maid outfits and were just like had them like highly trained.
Okay, so when you said maid outfits, I'm like instantly going to like dress them up like waifu, like little like anime maid cafe. Can you imagine a skinwalker in a little maid outfit?
It's fucked up, but honestly, I could see it. People are fucked up. People do crazy shit like that all the time. So
damn. I would love to see it, honestly. For as shitty as the skinwalkers are, to just like humiliate them in that sort of way, make them dress up in little fucking maid costumes.
Yeah, maybe it was like Native Americans or something that like owned the property and like were like, no, you're gonna suffer for your crimes, right? Or against
they're
us.
begging for forgiveness, and you're just begging for them to call you senpai, basically.
Also, it's like I kind of mentioned before, it feels like this was like more of a defensive thing if it is like a skinwalker thing. So it's like, were the skinwalkers really unjustified in this scenario?
No, honestly, I mean, if it was indeed So maybe against the Sherman family, yes, but if it was indeed a curse brought on by the Navajo because this other tribe literally sold their people into slavery, they probably deserved it a little bit. Um, I think the Shermans unfortunately just got caught in the crossfire here, but I don't
But they're
know.
also white people moving on to native
Yeah,
land, so
yeah. Which, like, arguably all white people have and are currently living on native land, which is a hard pill to swallow. But anyway, so back to the Shermans. Basically, the very day that they took possession of this property, the family spotted a large coyote or wolf in one of their pastures, which soon approached and it made its way to the livestock pen. Then it grabbed a calf by the neck and tried to drag it through the corral bars. And so Terry Sherman, he shoots the animal with a .357 Magnum, which I'm sure if you speak gun speak, that means something. To me, it doesn't. But he uses that gun, shoots this wolf thing at point blank range, but still, the wolf held onto the calf. And then after another shot, it released the calf and just stood there calmly looking at the man there. And after a few more shots, it just waltzed off. Like, it couldn't give two fucks less. It was just shot. So, again, skinwalkers, guys, you need wide ash and you need to shoot for the throat. And I don't think Terry was doing that because obviously he's not assuming that this coyote is a fucking skinwalker at this point. So, amazingly, there's no blood. There's no sign of injury to that animal that waltzed off. And the men, they just like followed the tracks of this animal for about a mile. And then it suddenly ended as if it just like had vanished. These tracks did. And this was really just the foreshadowing for the events that would actually plague the Shermans. So a few weeks later, Gwen Sherman, she's in her car. She encounters a wolf that was so large and its back was like parallel to the top of her window. So if, imagine like riding in a car and through the car window you just see the back of a, like, it's a big boy. He's a big fucking wolf. So this wolf was actually accompanied by another dog-like animal that she couldn't quite identify because it didn't look quite animal. So over the next 2 years, the Shermans, as well as their neighbors, they reported seeing a number of like just weird-looking animals in the area. These include exotic multicolored birds that weren't native to the region, and tall, dark beasts that resembled like Bigfoot or Sasquatch. God damn! I didn't even catch this yesterday. Bigfoot totally is a skinwalker. Oh my god, convince me otherwise. You fucking can't. So, at one point, the Shermans, they saw a strange hyena-like creature attacking one of their horses, and they described this creature as being low to the ground, heavily muscled, weighing like 200 pounds or something like that, and that it had curly red hair and a bushy tail. So, gingers are the devil. Says the ginger to a ginger. So as Mr. Sherman approaches this animal, again, the red-headed hyena, it vanishes before his very eyes. Like, it just poofs into thin air. And so afterward, they checked the horse and found that it had, like, a bunch of claw marks on its legs. And a few months later, a neighbor reported seeing a very similar animal running across their property. The Shermans, like their neighbors, they also saw, like, strange lights and flying objects, including more than, like, a dozen in one evening. And on one of many occasions that they spied these UFOs, they also experienced the death or disappearance of like 7 of their best cows. So 4 disappeared without a trace, and 3 more were found dead and like partially mutilated. So that's probably more of a UFO problem. So really, they just picked a really shitty property on Skinwalker UFO land, essentially. So
like they just fucked up.
They just really fucked up. They did not do their research. Of the cattle that disappeared, one seemed to have been just like magically lifted out of the snow. So like its hoof prints led into a field and it just simply stopped. So definitely they were abducted. And then the ground was just like littered with broken twigs and branches, and the tops of trees appeared to have been cut off. So yes, this is Skinwalker Ranch. However, I feel like this event was aliens that probably wanted to try a real American cheeseburger. So they stole the cows. Other strange events were also happening during these years, obviously. So pastures would unexplainably light up at the night, like in the middle of the night. The sounds of heavy machinery could be heard that seemed to be operating under the earth, and then just like a ton of poltergeist type activities. So like things moving and reappearing, doors opening and closing, that sort of shit, and then strange disembodied voices. So often those voices were speaking in unfamiliar language and they were heard from above. And then also crop circles of flattened grass were found around the ranch. So they just had, again, a healthy mix of fucking alien activity and I think skinwalkers fucking with them, really. So all of this happens over the course of 2 years. So just 2 years the Shermans are living there, and finally in May of 1996, they the straw that broke the camel's back. The Shermans are outside with 3 of their dogs, and Mr. Sherman, he notices a blue orb. It's darting around the field near the ranch house, and so he urges his dogs to go after it, which why do the puppies have to do it? So the dogs chased and they barked at the orb as they followed it into this thick underbrush, and then the next thing you know, Mr. Sherman hears the dogs make a bunch of really awful yelping noises, and when he calls out for them, they didn't respond. So the next morning he went to look for his dogs, which fucking terrible dog owner. Tell him to go after a evil thing and then just oh, I think they're dead. I'll wait till the morning to find out. So he goes out to look for the dogs and finds only 3 round greasy lumps and what appeared to be a scorched spot. So the dogs were never seen again, probably because the skinwalkers and or UFOs fucking got them.
Although, thinking about it, if my dog went after... I wouldn't send my dog after something like
Mm-hmm.
that, but, if my dog went after something like that and then, got attacked,
Mm-hmm.
no, I would probably still fight it, because I was about ready to fight that
Yeah.
mountain lion.
Mm-hmm.
But, I feel like a lot of people would just be like, I'll check on that when it's light out and I can see.
Yeah. Mr. Sherman.
But yeah.
You fucked up. So, after these 2 years, after the dogs disappeared, the Shermans, they finally decide to peace out. So they actually sell this property to a millionaire businessman named Robert Bigelow, which, if that doesn't give you the most millionaire businessman type of names ever. My name is he should go by Bob Bigelow. I like
he probably
that better.
does.
I hope he does. But anyway,
Probably Bobby Bigelow.
Bobby Bigelow. He buys the property, forces the family to sign an NDA so they can't speak about any more of their experiences there, and then establishes actually a UFO and paranormal research compound on the property that for 2 decades or so functions there. Then I think they sell it off to the military or something like that, because obviously who else are you going to sell
Who has
it
a
to?
use for that?
Yeah, right. So that about sums it up. However, if you're on that spooky side of TikTok, which I highly recommend you find your way to, you'll know that right now currently there's a ton of people, again, for Appalachia that are posting about their experience with what they call Wendigos or skinwalkers that sound basically the same. And so the running theory is that these Wendigos or skinwalkers are the ones responsible for all the disappearances in the national parks that you hear about, which is a little bit irrelevant to this story, but I just kind of wanted to throw it in there because right now, if you're on the right side of the internet, it's a very relevant thing. So there you go, guys. We got ladies in a barrel, and we got a new thing for you to be terrified of in the night. So,
And also, everything are skinwalkers.
mm-hmm.
Everything is skinwalkers.
Every cryptid is a skinwalker except for Nessie, who is clearly an alien. From the inside of the Earth, maybe.
Okay, so they're saying UFO Alley is where this skinwalker ranch is, right? So what
Yes.
if the aliens are skinwalkers? What if they're interchangeable?
Ooh.
What if it was never actual tribes people, but they just tried to come up with a solution for something that was happening, and I wouldn't say that it's just aliens or just skinwalkers. I would say that it's something that we don't we've tried to quantify in different ways, but it's all the same thing, and also the same thing as Sasquatch. And
I like that theory. Aliens are responsible for everything. The question is, are the aliens coming from inside of the hollow earth, or are they coming from outer space, or both?
Or are they coming from another dimension?
Another dimension.
Well, because these things sound super interdimensional beings, which is what a lot of cryptids are described as being, and weird spirits and demons and shit.
Yeah, they're just hitting a glitch in the matrix and popping up on our mortal realm and then causing some fucking fiasco and finding their way back to their own dimension. So,
which honestly, if I were an interdimensional being, I would be doing that shit too.
oh yeah,
I'd be like, I just want to fuck with people.
I had so many revelations while reading my notes today that I just
Maybe it's just like the heavily caffeinated.
It definitely is. Like, I don't suggest drinking 2 Red Bulls before. Well, I was on my second one at 9 a.m., so, like, don't suggest it. Anyways, that wraps up my stories, so let's have a tarot time, and hopefully this week I don't get called out for my mini brand habit.
All right. Tarot time. Tarot time. I realized that we didn't sing any sort of song last week.
Oh, man. Well, so we fucked up.
It was just a gross segue into me.
That's fine.
The cards reading you for
my mini
your
brand
mini brand
habit.
Okay. Well, this is dark.
Oh no. Also, I'm just gonna shout out and bump her rating up from a C+ to a B+ because she's been such a good girl. She just sits in here and naps while I record. Snoring. No, she's not snored at all. She hasn't dug out the door to get released. She's just napping and keeping me company like a good little bean.
I'm going to do 6 at a time because I pulled extra because it was no bueno time. Okay, so we're going to start with the 9 of Swords, which is like anxiety or depression. Then we're going to go to the Emperor reversed, which is like, this feels like bad, powerful masculine energy, either a boss or a dad or something. It can also be like someone who's an Aries, who's just a dick. So maybe it's a direct result, like your anxiety and depression is a direct result of this person's actions. We have the Hermit reverse, which is also like depression. We have the Magician. This is like having the tools that you need, or like being prepared. So, or like having all of the skills and the concentration to kind of try to overcome this, but there will be some sort of traumatic event in conjunction with like this kind of depressive episode that you're having. Then there is the 9 of Cups reversed, which this is like greed or materialism, or like unrealistic expectations. So this is kind of like, honestly, it feels like someone who is like bipolar and is going through like a depressive episode, and then something happens and you start going through like a manic episode where it's like like you're kind of out of touch with reality.
Could this be a reading for Trisha about her frenemies exit?
Girl, this might be. It seems like, I mean, that's what it seems like, is like you're like depressed, whatever, something snaps, and then you kind of flip into a manic episode and you're like, I am God. So
Trisha, honey.
So the next card is the Moon upright, which is like someone's keeping secrets for you, or honestly it could be kind of playing off of that like delusion, that like that God complex kind of manic high, where it's like you have this illusion of what's happening and it's not what is actually happening. It's not like based in reality. And then there is the 3 of Swords reverse, which is like, despite like how you're feeling right now, people will forgive you, but it's going to be a terse forgiveness. It's going to be like you're going to have to continue to work, because like this is Page of Cups reverse. This is like immaturity, insecurity, kind of coming off of that, like a very tepid truce that's kind of like happening because you, and not you specifically, but our listeners or whoever, whatever this is saying, like whoever's this is for, it's like your actions can't, maybe it is Trisha, because it does feel like your actions can't be forgiven. Like they can be forgiven, but they can't be forgotten, is kind of what it says to me. I have the 5 of Wands reversed, which that is like avoidance or evasion, like you are trying to run away from your feelings. I have the World reversed, which that is like regret, lack of closure, or like just kind of keeps reading into, again, you can be forgiven, it can't be forgotten. And then the last card I pulled is the Page of Pentacles, which is like immaturity, ignorance, and frustration. So that's where I'm going to stop this. It honestly does feel like the Trisha Paytas, like, frenemies thing. Because it's like, you're immature. You did some stuff that was pretty self-serving and, like, in interest of, like, your manic high, and you didn't really care what else happened. And then what was expected was to go back to it just being fine after what you did. But what you did, like, you need to come back to reality and realize that people don't have to forget what you did. So,
Trisha, this one's for you.
Yeah, I guess the takeaway is just because people can forgive what you did doesn't mean that they have to forget what you did. So, anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, so our words of wisdom and takeaways from the week for me.
Open barrels. Open barrels if they're in your fucking house.
Always open mystery barrels, no matter how they're labeled. If you hear screaming in the woods, don't go after it. Call the cops. Let them handle it. And Trisha, you need to apologize, girl. And I've got some ideas. I could be your PR team. I've got some ideas for you. Hit me up. We're going to do this apology right. And that's all I've got for right now. So pretty straightforward tips and tricks for the week. We'll see you guys next week. If you want to follow us in the meantime, you know where to find us. Links below, links in the description, links in our bios. If you don't know where that is, you're smart and you'll figure it out. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.